Oseo.
Oseo.
It's a Cherokee greeting. Namaste.
Namaste.
That's the Indian greeting. And Jai Ganesh. Jai Ganesh to Deborah, the yogini woman who has been celebrating the festival of Ganesha. The festival of Ganesha is also being called the resurgence of Ganesha. And that's what I'm starting out with. For the past 10 days, this celebration in India, it's a major celebration. And that's the name I'm going by, because it is a resurgence of Ganesha. And today, I'm told, is the last day of this celebration, where a large clay image of Ganesha has been specially made, and in a procession people are going to take it to the water, if they're near the ocean, and they're going to, submerge it into the water. So that's what I'm starting with. And if we go over here to this piece here to start with Ganesha, you can see that. This is a coconut, and it is surrounded with mango leaves, and it is a symbol of the goddess, and it is Gauri. And Gauri, she's called the goddess of plants and vegetation, and the mango leaves around here are the symbols of Kama. We call him, the god of love. And also Gauri, she is the mother of Ganesha. And here you have a little Ganesha here to designate all of this Ganesha here. And then we can come over here to this picture that I made, little watercolor. Being a Cherokee, in Cherokee, true-to-life dreams and apparitions are the facts of our existence. They are the facts that we live by. And right here, what this is about is I had the apparition and the embodiments of Ganesha on a number of occasions. That is where the Ganesha is in me, I would say, embodiment there. And in this time that I was experiencing this on different occasions, I made this little watercolor to have the spirit of that Ganesha is fresh. And that's what I definitely know. So that's how we're starting with Ganesha. The next theme I have today is Krishna. It's Krishna, Radha Krishna. And we're going to have the little chant of that. Many of you may have heard that chant.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Ram.
Okay, now I'm sure everybody that's heard that is hearing that again and singing along with us. A little bit of explanation while you're still looking there. The Sanskrit word devata, div, is from devataka, meaning the illuminator, the self-revealing mind. And each deva is the deity that represents an exact form of revelation. In this Krishna mantra we just sang, Krishna is the deva that's embodying the fulfilled revelation of the sacred. In Krishna's manifestation as Radha, he is both the font of the emotion of joy and sexual emotion, madhura, love. And the devotees of the premise, identified themselves as Radha, and under the Krishna who is Radha, Krishna is both Krishna and Radha. Krishna is the indwelling spirit that guides the body and the senses, and the gross desires are purified by Vishnu, who plays Gopala, the goat herd boy. So Krishna is this month also celebrating, and it's also celebrating the birthday of Radha. I'm starting off a bit with the Hare Krishna, with both of them, and coming from the Ganesha, the elephant person. This is a poem by Partheo Sereno, and it's the Elephant Raga. And so remember, this is Radha, Krishna, and love. Love here. So you go look over there to that one. That's right. I should say that. This picture is called Mithuna, and it's got a bit of a T. And I should say these are very often surrounding temples in one place or another. All of this is the divinization of our body and our senses, and this is where the union becomes, so I would say 2 in 1, like that, and that's what we're talking about here. Elephant Raga. Love likes you cracked and crumbling, with the paint peeled off, your overcoat threadbare, back 40 up in smoke, brush fires at large in the wind-carved gorge. Love wants you breathless, dark and iridescent as coal, simple as rain, useless, stretched out, spreadable like lamplight on snow. Love wants to pour you from this world into the next. She is going to outlive you, crouched in the reeds, blackberry fingers, scabby knees, lost to you even though her scent lingers at the back of your tongue. She is wild enough to stay hidden, sad as anything to watch the flurry of your grown-up rice paper, wheat-pasted wits. No matter how many times you climb the ladder and bring her down, she floats back up. Gypsy moth, broom-swept queen, empress of the land of the loons, oblivious to lock and gate, she worms her way in, not where you wanted her. The missing silver winds up in your hair. The strings and skins the woodwinds know in her love where to dig the well. So that gives us a real good start on Krishna, Radha and Krishna. So the Krishna is considered as the ultimate being, God, if you like, the superior being who has various manifestations and incarnations and like that. It's a very full cosmology. In India, the Radha Krishna seemed to begin to start around 1,000 years ago. Poetry, the poets have pretty much engendered and Krishna, and as Krishna begins to grow, eventually around towards the 16th century, Radha begins to grow with him. So she's a female, she's a woman in the myth that becomes a deity, and like that. Over here, this is an antique beaded piece. It's called Toran. This features Black Krishna. Krishna is figured as the Dark One, or black in any sense. He seems to be quite really indigenous. And this Toran, this would stem from the 16th century. And this is the beaded part that's sewed on a much larger tapestry that hangs, for the occasion, for the celebration or the festival. So it's very important that I have this here, and he's also figured as a cowherd boy when he's young, and these no doubt are cows down here underneath of him. Well, it's very interesting to come down here to this little sculpture here. This is very, very old. This is from the 13th or 14th century, and very rare. So what's particular is to look at the early Krishna, who is a person who lives in the forest. That's what he's called. He's a forest dweller, and his slim body and his loincloth and his flute and the way he has his hair all shows that he is this early person in the forest. Later he's evolved into, here is the more recent picture of him, a statuette of him. As his popularity grew and people are involved with him, they more and more addressed him very regally. And that's how we usually see him. And here is a very contemporary piece of Radha and Krishna together. Reportedly, most of the temples in India of Radha are always showing her and Krishna together rather than seeing her by herself. Here, and this is actually a doll from India. And the Hindu woman has told me she's dressed for the Navaratri. The Navaratri is both in the spring and in the autumn. So she told me this is a Navaratri dress woman here, and the Navaratri will come in October. So that's another celebration. Krishna also evolved out of someone who was much earlier, known as Kama. Kama, rendered as desire and love and so forth. So there's even a song of Kama where he is venerating Krishna. If you look up here, here is Krishna, and it's particularly his toes. Kama definitely regards, I wish that I could be reborn in the land of the cows, because that's what he is. He's a cowherd boy, and I would be able to worship, your painted toes. So his toes are painted here. Radha and Krishna are really very young people. The Krishna that's in the Bhagavad Gita, who drives the chariot for Arjuna, is in his adult life. But the Krishna consciousness people see that this is all one Krishna. He's Krishna when he's a little baby, he's a Krishna when he's a boy. In his teenage years, he is in this romance with Radha. So they look older than that, but in the stories, in the poems, they're really, really quite young. And while we're still looking at Krishna, I want to introduce a very, very famous poet in India, Mirabai. She's like what Sappho was in ancient Greece, and maybe she lived a little bit later. Mirabai. Mirabai was one of the most famous of the women Bhakta poets of North India. And I'll have this picture here to represent Mirabai. Mirabai is said to have been devoted to Krishna from a very early age. In one of her poems she asks, "O Krishna, did you ever rightly value my childhood love?" As her father was away much of the time, she was then sent to be raised at her grandfather's house. More than 1,300 poems, commonly known as the bhajans, the sacred songs, are attributed to her. These are popular throughout India and have been translated and published worldwide. In the Bhakti tradition, they are in passionate praise of Lord Krishna. In most of her poems, she describes her unconditional love for Krishna and promises Krishna Bhakti as the best way of life. Mirabai's songs are in a simple form called chant, verse, a term used for a small spiritual song, usually composed in simple rhythms with repeating refrain collected in her parwali. The extant versions are in Rajasthani and in Braj, a dialect of Hindi spoken in around Vrindavan, the childhood home of Krishna, sometimes mixed with Rajasthani. Here are some of her best songs and poems. Bhajans are conducted here in San Diego at people's houses. Several of us have, in the past, attended these bhajans. So, they're very upbeat. They're sacred songs, and that's what this is. This is one of hers. The dark one is Krishna, is the name of this bhajan. Thick overhead, clouds of the monsoon, a delight to this feverish heart. Season of rain, season of uncontrolled whispers, the dark ones returning. O swollen heart, O sky brimming with moisture, tongued lightning first, and then thunder, convulsive spatters of rain, and then wind chasing the summertime heat. Mira says, dark one, I have waited. It's time to take my songs into the street. So, again, referring back to this Toran, the province is from Rajasthan, which is in sort of northwest India here, and here you can see that she is definitely speaking to the Dark One as Krishna. One thing that I need the Mary Oliver, the big white book that's in there. Water is very, very significant in India. Water has a real being. It's just not, wet liquid like it is for modern people. And here, this bottle here, we could call it holy water. This is from the Ganga. The Ganga, well, there are many holy rivers, the Saraswati, the Narmada, and many of them. And this one is the Ganga, perhaps the most sacred river. And you want to use it for puja, for worship, you can use it, different kind of things. Oh, good. Next thing I want to talk about is over here. This is my drawing. And this is my Radha, actually Radha Kunda. Radha Kunda is like you say, Lady of the Lake. This is Radha of the Lake, Radha's lake. And the verse in Sanskrit goes something like this: Yata Radha Priyal Visnos Tasya Kundam Priyam Tata Sarva Gopisu Saivaika Vishnur Ayanta Varaba. Just as Radha is dear to Krishna, so her bathing place is dear to Krishna. Among the gopis, she alone stands as his beloved. The gopis are, the milkmaids, the milk girls, and that's here. If we imagine, these people are, young, I would say teenagers, and it's a very pastoral place, and all of these people are all together with cows, and that's what the gopis are, and that Radha is figured among the gopis, and that he somehow, kind of singles out Radha, and she gets kind of specialized that way. When he fools around with the other girls, then she gets jealous about that. So these are all stories, these are all in the story. So it's figured in this place, it's sort of north and central India, is the place where all this is going on. And this was all in his teenage years and her teenage years. And in that place that there was a lake, a pond or a lake, and that's called the Radha Kunda. Why is Radha Kunda so exalted? The lake is exalted because it belongs to Radha, who is the most beloved by Krishna, and because she holds the motions of the power and currents. And she is clear, insomuch as the universe is reflected in her, and because she is deep and not so easily comprehended. Radha Kunda is the infinite reservoir of creative willpower, and by joining with her, I am wet with her, and which may be the experience of the generating source. If one bathes even once in her lake, one's love of Krishna will be aroused. So the lake is, there is an actual lake. It was believed it was rediscovered there in the 16th century and then enlarged. And so people live around it or come to it, for these blessings. But in the poetry, it's also figuring as a kind of metaphor. It's a sacred lake of the sacred, of this wonderful imagination, as much as it is actual a place with water. So all of this is really to give the idea, because I can't go into the many stories, songs, plays. It is a full-blown culture in India. In the 1960s, it was brought here to America. And Swami Bhakti Vendetta, I think I'm saying his name right, has brought that Krishna consciousness here. And so there are Krishna temples. There's one here in San Diego and PB, and up in Berkeley when I was there, and so forth. And so that has really engendered, it's all about peace and it's all about love. It's really wonderful, something to consider. So that's the Krishna consciousness, and chanting and dancing and prasad, having holy meals. I first encountered it in San Francisco when some of the people from the Krishna temple invited me into the temple that was there in San Francisco, and that was actually my first introduction into the Krishna consciousness in this way. It also, what we call the organization, publishes many books, many of the books that have been translated from Sanskrit into English, like the Bhagavad Gita, and many of the other kind of sutras, Puranas, and also other books like anthropology and sociology. So very much, with a certain kind of a cultural education is also very much a part of this. In the story with Radha and Krishna, she not only gets jealous, they never have we're going to call it an adult sense, a consummate relationship. She never actually becomes married with him, and he's moved away. And so that's very much a part of it, very much a part of these stories is the person's devotion and love to the deity. Krishna in the stories is the deity, and to engender this kind of emotion, to really have this kind of emotion that I'm referring to here is really to engender a religious feeling, a spiritual religious feeling, and that's really what this is all about. Bhakti is the word used for this devotion, and it is a full consciousness. But here, I'm just emphasizing a little bit, it's also the distance or separation as between Radha and her beloved Krishna, as between the devotee and the deity. And so that's a lot what that is happening in that. Uh-oh. No. Yeah. So here we are with Mary Oliver and a poem about unrequited love, which is a very prominent theme in the story of Radha and Krishna. The flowers I wanted to bring to you, wild and wet, from the pale dunes, and still smelling of the summer night, and still holding a moment or two of the night's cricket's humble prayer, would have been so handsome in your hands, so happy, I dare to say it, in your hands. Yet your smile would have been nowhere, and maybe you would have tossed them onto the ground, or maybe for tenderness you would have taken them into your house and given them water and put them in a dark corner out of reach. In matters of love of this kind, there are things we long to do, but must not do. I would not want to see your smile diminished, and the flowers, anyway, are happy just where they are, on the pale dunes, above the cricket's humble nest, under the blue sky that loves us all. Hare Krishna.